Back again, back again. We are the Sports Afterparty podcast, and we have a very, very special guest in the building.
Yes.
But Afo, how are you doing first?
I'm good, my bro. I'm good. Yeah, it's been a bit of a weird one. It's international break. Been the last 2 weeks. So looking forward to the Premier League coming back. It's been a good couple of weeks of sport. So yeah, man, feeling good. Not enjoying the dark skies that we're getting at the moment, but it is what it is, man. It's what comes with living in England.
It is what it is. And someone that we experienced quite a few of dark skies up there in Loughborough, most of our time up there, is my boy Henry, who's joining us on the pod today. He is, unfortunately, guys, an Arsenal fan, but he's also knows his onions when it comes to sport. A big statistician. I'm hoping that we get loads of stats from this guy today, and loads of info about the football world. So, Henry, you messaged us about coming on. I'm glad you're here, and I can't wait to get into it, mate. How are you, pal?
Oh no, great! Great to be here. Thanks, Jez. Yeah, I'm good. And yeah, I remember those windy days at Loughborough as well. My goodness, they were bleak. Don't miss those. But yeah, no, great to be here, guys. And yeah, looking forward to some good conversation.
Definitely, man. Definitely, it's good to have you here, bro. It's been a while, actually. It's been a while since we've actually seen each other in person like this. So yeah,
too long.
It's good. So we have a wide array of topics today, which is usually actually has a bit of a football focus. So we're going to make sure that we cover all things football. And I think we're going to start with a really easy question for me, but maybe you guys might have a bit more insight. But should Southgate still be England manager? Afo.
You want to talk to me first? No, I was ready to fire him 2 years ago. So for me, that's an easy one to answer. I think very, very quickly, I could see tactically that he wasn't that guy. And what's interesting, I was kind of looking into the stats of what his win percentage is in comparison to other England managers. So he averages about 61% in the 8 years he was there. And I was like, do you know what? That's not too bad when you compare it to how other England managers did. But like I say to you all the time, Jeremy, sometimes it's about the eye test as well. And from kind of watching England play, the decisions he made in the big moments, where, again, a perfect example was against Croatia, I think, 2018, in the semi-final, where he needed to make a substitution, he needed to change a few things around, and it took him way too long to kind of do that. And I think for me, the fact he made that same mistake with then future tournaments kind of just screamed why he wouldn't be successful as England manager. And at the highest level, when everyone's balling out, everyone's performing, you need someone that's going to make the tactical decisions that are going to, flip things in your favour. Gareth didn't have that. Gareth did not have that. So sorry to him, because again, man management skills, top. Again, gets on well with everyone. Again, you have to respect that. High win percentage, 61%, like I said. But it's about, do you handle your business? And Southgate didn't handle his business when it came down to it. So for me, yeah, sorry, bro, you've got to go. What are you saying, Henry? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that number does sort of inflate the perception of him because it is high. I think it's only second to Capello.
Yeah.
But if you look at some of the big games against big sides, he didn't really perform very well at all. There isn't the numbers that back up that he could beat an Italy, beat a Spain, beat a Germany on his day. And I think he should have gone previous competition as well after 2021. And I think that was a good chance to get someone else in, which didn't happen. So we sort of stuck with him. But it was in this latest tournament that style of football and the decision making that really, for me, came to a fore. When you see him playing Walker at right back, Trippier at left back, and them both not playing to then accommodate the players ahead of them, I was just screaming at my TV. I'm going, Ben White overlaps Bukayo Saka every week at Arsenal.
Yeah.
Kyle Walker didn't do it once in certain games. He just didn't do it. And you go around building, international football is so much about chemistry. And that's why the great sides like Spain, 2008, 2010, 2012, they're all playing for either Barca or Real Madrid. He had a chance to create some chemistry and he just didn't do it. And you do wonder what decisioning is going through his head when he puts out the team. And in fact, he didn't react as well. He didn't change during games. The camera pans to the bench and they go, why isn't Cole Palmer coming on?
Yeah.
You know, why isn't he bringing Foden on early? All those sorts of things. You just wonder what is going on. And the whole Trent Alexander-Arnold's experiment in midfield, you know, it's the most technical role that you have. And then to plonk someone in there who doesn't play it week in, week out for his club, albeit he inverts. Yeah, it really was painful to watch. And I think, to your point, Afo, the numbers, 61% win percentage is relatively good. Yeah. But the football we watched was relatively poor. It really was. So, yeah, I thought it was, overdue, and I'm happy that we've moved on. We need to move on.
So, Henry, you mentioned there about, I guess, around like the coaching and him making certain decisions late or never really making decisions. So why do you think he did stuff like play Trent in midfield when he never really did that for England or Liverpool? What do you think encouraged him? Like, because for me, I find it very, very hard to understand how he make those decisions. So yeah, what do you think? Yeah, cool.
The Trent one, I really can't rationalise because there's only so much time they have in the build-up to those tournaments to test the waters with some of those ideas. And for him to then shoot for it in the first game in the group stage, you do go, is this tried and tested? And it just wasn't. It just felt like such a strange thing to do. The Trippier at left back his hand was kind of forced by the availability of left backs. He just didn't have any. But at the same time, you then ask, well, why don't you play a left-footed player for a start at left back, or get someone in who can play at left back? So some of it I just can't rationalise. He must have seen something in a training session, which we don't get visibility of. He must have seen something to give him the idea to say, yeah, we're going to shoot with Trent at CDM and play that pivot role. But on the pitch, I didn't get it. I couldn't understand why he's going for that.
Yeah,
what do you think,
boys? I'll just chime in as well, mate, because I think the reason why he played Trent in the midfield is because I think that was one of the few times he just gave in to media pressure. And I think there was a lot because of the way Trent delivers a ball into the box, the way he can pass and link up play at Liverpool. I think people got a little bit too excited, in particular in the media, and Liverpool fans probably thinking, oh, okay. And because of his lack of ability to defend properly at the highest level, people thought, okay, maybe we need to accommodate Trent in our team. And the best way to do that is for him to play the CDM role. We found out that was not going to be successful at all. But what annoys me about, I think it's a good thing and a bad thing about Southgate, but I think at the international level, it's probably not one of the best traits to have, is that he is loyal to a T. The loyalness. Well, the loyalty that he showed to Harry Maguire, for example, like no one can really explain that, but for some reason he managed to pull out pretty impressive performances for England, right? And you look at, for example, Pickford as well in goal. I think when people were calling for the Arsenal Ramsdale to be put in goal, he stuck with Pickford, and I think Pickford's always been reliable and a pretty safe pair of hands in the England shirt. For me, it's just the decisions that he made to pick players that were more obvious. So, for example, like for me, it's his substitutions more than anything. His substitutions are the things that drove me nuts. When you could see that we easily needed some injection of excitement, of pace, of some killer instinct. He never did them on time. He would always wait about 20 minutes later than it should have been, than they should have been substituted on. I think of like Cole Palmer when we should have got him on earlier. I think at the times where we probably should have had, this is back when in the past World Cup, where we could have brought on Sancho earlier or Rashford earlier to add something to the game. So for me, it's just his. Oh gosh, I hate to say this, but he didn't have any bollocks. He needed to fucking he needed to actually like risk something, and he was just too conservative. And for me, I'm really upset because I feel like we had a class generation of players there that we've potentially wasted. Harry Kane, what is he, like 31 now, 32? Yeah, and we've got What's his name? Carl Walker's coming towards the end of his career. Obviously, we didn't get Rashford's a medium-aged lad, but he's out of the picture then. But when he was on hot fire form, he didn't get the most out of him. I think someone like Sterling as well. We didn't manage to win anything with him in the team. So there's a load of really quality, talented players that could compare against any golden generation of the past. And I just think that we've wasted that opportunity with these guys. Now, I do think there's a great crop that are coming up next, and we'll discuss it a little bit about how Tuchel's going to do in that role. But I'm pretty upset with the tenure that we've had as a team.
Yeah, and I think I think his reign is an example of what previous England managers struggled with. When you think about the Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes situation, I think one thing that frustrates me about football is when managers feel the need to squeeze every single player into the starting 11. When, for me, sport has always been who's the best performing, who fits the team and where we're trying to play. And then if you don't perform, someone else comes in and takes your, or yourself. I think for me, Southgate took way too long. He took way too long to make the tough decisions. And it might be the reason why he never gets a top job in England. Again, I can't see him moving. That part of me hopes he goes to United. I hope that's who, hope.
We'll touch on United, but you know what? There was a bit of an uproar when he was announced as they were actually looking at him. But yeah, at United, it's more than the manager. But yeah, go on, boys.
Yeah, well, yeah. Again, we'll see how things play out. But yeah, I think ultimately, I think obviously you mentioned that there's a whole bunch of players that maybe are past time a little bit, and I think you could see that with the last tournament with Harry Kane. I don't know if he was injured, but Harry Kane for me was poor whole tournament, considering he had an unbelievable season at Bayern Munich previous year, even though he didn't really win, but it didn't win. Even though he had a great season, he struggled in the tournament. And I think any top manager, when you see something like that, and you've got options off the bench that are balling out as well, you switch it up. You're Harry, like even though you're captain. Let's try something different, or sub him out earlier, and he didn't do that. So yeah, I think that's kind of like a testament to maybe English coaches, and probably why there was a struggle when it came to decide who's going to be the next England manager, and if people wanted it to be an English coach, for example.
Who did you boys want to be an England coach?
I'll let you go, mate.
Wow, it's a difficult question though. I mean, because of the timing element of it, it made it difficult to ever see Pep actually getting the nod. But for someone who has done it all, that's the guy you shoot for. That's the guy England should have been shooting for. And I think approaches were made or something. I've read recently. He stood out. I mean, as an Arsenal fan, it obviously benefits us as well if Pep is no longer managing that side in Manchester. But you've done everything you can basically to set yourself up for success if you manage to acquire Pep Guardiola as your head coach. I think that's just a fact. The Klopp thing was I don't think that's ever going to materialise, given where the sort of rationale behind him moving away from Liverpool, him moving into an international coaching role seems unlikely. So again, would have been a nice to have, but the likelihood of that happening was pretty far down.
I would have thought an international job would be more suited to someone like Klopp who wants like a bit of a break from the intensity of like week to week.
It's a tough gig though, because of the expectations. It's not, he wouldn't necessarily be walking into an environment where he'll have some tolerance. I think coming into the England job of how many years of not winning a trophy since '66, it's gearing up to the next competition and being like, right, we need to have some return here. So I definitely see what you're saying in terms of it doesn't come with the same level of intensity day to day as coaching Liverpool. Absolutely not. But I feel like he really would be under that pressure to succeed straight away, which I just don't know if the sort of rationale he was giving for walking away from Liverpool, it didn't sound like that energy, that motivation mix would be right. So I didn't see that ever really happening. But Pep for me, Pep would be top of my list, and FA should have been doing everything they could to get him.
So I believe with Klopp, so hasn't he now joined Red Bull? So it's again like head of football operations, but I think for
Yeah.
I don't think it's just Leipzig, but I think it's for all their football teams. So
Yeah, it's for the group, yeah.
yeah, so I don't think that would have been. Yeah, I agree. I don't think that would have been a viable option. I think clearly there was something wrong there, and he was trying to get the hell out of England. Maybe again, he's like, yeah, I need to get out of here. He needs to be back in Germany. But even beyond that, I think a lot of top clubs are struggling at the moment with who's actually available at the moment. Like, how many top coaches are there really? I think Pep would have been the great option if he was available, but again, seems a bit unrealistic. And do you wait till the end of the season to try and get him? And is England maybe the next job for him? He might prefer Spain or Brazil.
Well, our interim coach was doing really well. We were playing some exciting football. He could have.
Was it sustainable though? That's the key question.
Right, we have 2 years until the next. Yeah. I mean, guys, let's let's throw the ball about a little bit. Let's have fun in the meantime.
Well, I was going to say he came out very quickly. When I say very well, last week he came out saying that he knew he wasn't ready to be the coach. Again, you're not trying to hear that from the CEO of a business or the head of an operation, like someone. And again, it's true. Again, he was probably out of his depth a little bit. Like, it's different from coaching the under-21s to then having to kind of manage the big boys where you're expected to win every single game and the pressure that kind of.
Exactly.
And he's probably going to just settle, have it easy, get his money, try and win with those young boys, and down the road, if the perfect opportunity presents itself, then he would make the move. But
okay, so that means there's been a mistake or a lack of concentration on the development of the next England manager then. Because if we saw, and maybe this isn't the best way to do it, tell Ben he doesn't need to crawl on the floor behind you. But as I was saying, because with Southgate, he was kind of bred through the system to be the next England manager. And whether people think he was successful or not, that seems to be a pathway that England chose with him. I know if you look at other sports, like I look at New Zealand rugby, they have a history of, getting their coaches to come through the system, whether it's, being a part of the management system in some capacity as an assistant coach and then taking on the head job. I think maybe England needs to think a bit more long term, potentially a lot regarding Tuchel and his process and his predecessor. Oh my God, I can't speak today, guys. The person who takes over from his job is going to need to have been through. I think this is. Well, and because I think one thing that was great about Southgate is that he got time. He was given like the excuse of time, which I'm almost certain that for a couple of reasons Tuchel's not going to get. One, because I think he's a foreign manager. Two, because he's kind of bombed out of his last couple of places, and he loves to, have a fiery attitude towards not only the media but also to the people above him as well. Actual organisation. So I guess we might as well touch a little bit on.
Before we go to Tuchel, bro. So again, two coaches that were considered, Potter and Eddie Howe. So again, Howe maybe not as easy to get because he's currently at Newcastle, but Potter being out of the job, he probably was in with a chance. So I guess maybe to touch on that, like, what's your opinion on both those guys? Because for me, I would prefer Eddie Howe over Potter, but neither of those guys have won. And if the goal is to bring someone who has won, then they probably do not work. And for me, Potter is a similar personality to a Southgate. For me, like, there's a bit too much. There's not enough of I don't think he's got that dog in him, and I think we kind of need that. But yeah, what do you guys think on those two?
On Potter, and then to link back Jez's point around nurturing the next England manager, his roots seem to be ticking a lot of those boxes. Had foreign experience in a foreign league, then had proven success at Brighton, and then had got that big job at Chelsea. And hindsight's 2020, but it's almost a case of Chelsea wasn't the big club he should have moved to, because it's such a toxic environment that they were going into. If he had maybe replaced Klopp, if the timing had been right there, if he had moved into Spurs, if he had made that gradual step up and made the right move to a quote-unquote top six, big six club, then he could have had a really good position to have success in the most competitive league and set himself up to be that next England coach. Because I think his development path was ticking a lot of boxes. In the same way, Eddie Howe is sort of following that now, but is sort of hitting a bit of a plateau in the sense of Newcastle aren't developing, I think, at the rate at which the ownership probably anticipate and want. And I think that sort of aligns to that argument. They hasn't won anything, probably isn't the right guy to be going for at this point in time. But with Potter, it almost felt like he was earmarked. He was making the right moves, but then Chelsea just wasn't the right one in the end. A different top six club, and I think he had every chance.
There isn't a formula to appointing a winning England head coach, because we've had the Italian manager who's won everything outside of, in the Italian league and in Spain. We've had those people with years of experience, right? And it just hasn't worked out. So do you think the
Capello example is a good one, considering, the language barrier? Just for example, just as a key, how well do you think he could get across the ideas that he wanted to?
Yeah, no, in his early stages, probably that was definitely a struggle. But I know he picked up English relatively well come to the latter stages of his time in the England job. But I understand that, and I think Tuchel, obviously being an English speaker, is going to benefit from that a lot.
Yeah.
But let's look at Sven, right? He had won in the club game prior to joining England, and I mean, we had some pretty good tournaments, but again, quarterfinals, semi-finals, not hitting the great heights. So for me, it's just not an exact science. So just on the Eddie Howe situation, he would have been my first choice. Big fan of Eddie Howe. I think the situation that's happening at Newcastle is a really interesting one, because I think this isn't like when the Saudi ownership came into Man City years ago, right, where there was a really clear big four, big three, and then all they had to do was break into that. Now there's like 6, 7, 8 really good teams in the league, and the battle to get great talent is much harder nowadays as well, because like throwing money at the issue isn't enough to just get into the top 4 consistently nowadays, right? It might work for 1 year, but after that, you're going to have the best infrastructure around it, like Man City have now put in place to make sure they're consistently winning.
Yeah. But then, to play devil's advocate, do you not think that almost works against Eddie Howe? Because then you're sort of looking for a differentiation, and that's the coaching ability to then cut through in a world where spend is, for those guys almost put to one side, because they can go out and buy who they want, and they've acquired great talent. I don't think anyone can deny that, but we're not seeing that step up. We're not seeing them push through and actually challenge for the league. And you go, I'd like to see my manager as being the catalyst for that, which I don't think he's done.
I understand the argument, but if you compare his squad to every other team that's above him, right? And then look at the managers who are in place above him. Prior to that, we had Pep, we had Klopp, we had Arteta, with an Arsenal squad that's better than his Newcastle squad. You have United, which I still think man for man has a better squad than them. Now, I think Eddie, when he was at Southampton, he showed that he can coach the hell out of a team, right? I guess what we're saying is when the quality gets a bit higher, can you...
Yeah, the marginal gains are
exactly. But I think the marginal gains are just a bit more in terms of the other clubs and the infrastructure and the personnel that they have around. And we also got to remember that Newcastle, as an entire organisation, as you know, to win a league, it's more than just the coach and the players. You have to have like the entire organisation running as a well-oiled machine. And I just don't think they're there just yet.
And to be fair, last season they did have injuries. I'm pretty certain the keeper got injured at some point for a long period of time.
They had a lot of injuries last year.
Centre back got injured as well. Isak got a few times during the run-in. So yeah, I think that's played a role in them not having the success last season. But I think when you look at Aston Villa getting into the top 4, and then Newcastle haven't, and it looks like Newcastle probably won't get into the top 4 again this year, I wouldn't be surprised if Eddie Howe is gone at the end of the season, because initially he wasn't the man they were looking at. I know they wanted to go for a bigger profile. So it makes you wonder, people like Zidane. Like Zidane hasn't coached for 3-4 years. I wonder what he's waiting for. Again, not for Newcastle, but I just...
yeah, exactly.
That is a really good shout, dude.
Someone like him hasn't coached again off the back of Madrid. Is he waiting for the French job, or is he waiting for a much higher profile? Is he waiting for like a Man City, for example? So, we'll see what happens with Eddie Howe. I think with the way things are playing out, I won't be surprised if he's gone by then. Yeah.
I think to that point though, we're speaking around these guys having compromises. These guys aren't perfect, and so I think that's why I still maintain that Pep would be my number one choice, because he's as close to perfection as you're going to get. You've done everything you can. Yeah. You've done your due diligence. He's a proven winner. He's going to be your best shot at success. Knows the English game. Will be coaching players he coaches week in, week out. It feels like that would be my preference to go for. And then everything else is going to have some sort of compromise. And I do think Eddie Howe is compromised, like as we've just discussed. And unfortunately, I think Graham Potter as well is now definitely compromised because of that really difficult spell at Chelsea. I just think that's a tough period to go through. And, his route back into top level coaching is TBC, really. But yeah, the Dan point is really interesting as well. You kind of forget about, I definitely forgotten about him as a coach, because he has been out of the game for that long. The French piece is interesting. I think there was chatter building up to the previous competition around Deschamps' approach, especially with Saliba and things like this. And is he kind of still the right guy for the job? So I think that that could be a natural move, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. The only issue with Zidane, I think it's unfair that it stuck with him after winning, was it 4 Champions Leagues in a row? Or was it 5? I think it was 4, right?
In a row?
I think he won 4 in a row.
Oh, even as a coach? No, so I think he won 3 in a row.
3 in a row, okay. I think he doesn't get a lot of credit for his actual coaching ability, because people think that Real Madrid team was so good that all they just needed was someone to just hold everything together. So I think that's one of the reasons why maybe a lot of teams haven't gone in for him, but then also why maybe I wonder if he. I know he's a really confident character, and he probably does have the confidence that he could go into anywhere and do the job. But I still wonder whether people actually give him the credit for those Champions League wins.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think it's very. But I think at the same time, it's not easy to manage all those personalities. And I think that's one thing that you have to respect with going back to Southgate, you have to respect, because again, he managed the personalities relatively well.
But those personalities aren't the same. They're not the same personalities as the Real Madrid.
Yeah, but still, the British players are big personalities. Again, it's not easy to manage those personalities. And he managed them and the media very well.
I think what a lot of ex-players will say is, if you compare this team to when they were in the England squad, like all these players, like they played in the under-21s together, and now they've gone into the first team together, so they're actually friends. While previously it was United sat over there, Chelsea sat over there, Arsenal sat over there, and they didn't have that same level of camaraderie and probably less arrogance around thinking that they're the better player.
No, fair point on that. I think. Yeah, we'll see. Like I said, we'll see what Tuchel does, and I think it's been an interesting conversation hearing fans being upset with us bringing in a German coach, and I think, and even some players or ex-players, which I find very, very interesting, because should it always be an English coach? Someone gave the example of, I guess, Brazil, Argentina. You wouldn't expect an Argentinian great or Argentinian player coach to then coach the Brazilian national team, and if in England we should be following the same route. Of course, you think about Germany and the war and everything that comes with it. But I think for me, and we'll touch on Tuchel next, I think where Tuchel might struggle, personality-wise, he's a weird character. He's a very, very weird character. And I think he might struggle with the media in the UK, especially if things don't go his way very, very quickly. His style of play as well, I think, even though England have never really had an attacking style of play, it's going to be interesting how fans take to that, because we're going to be going back to defensive, probably 3 centre-backs, wing-backs, and it's going to be interesting to see what he does with that. Someone like Saka probably going to end up playing left wing-back, I assume. So yeah, I guess I'm intrigued to kind of get your thoughts on that, boys. Like, what do you think? Do you think it's weird us bringing in a German, even though again it probably was the best option? right now? Do you think it's weird us bringing in the German coach?
But look, from my perspective, the nationality of the coach doesn't matter. I don't care whether you're from, Zimbabwe or Germany or the Ivory Coast, right? As long as you're a good manager. I can understand why people might see that, in particular with a German manager, and the history that England football has had against Germany, but from a club and an international level as well, actually. But I'm always for picking the right man for the job. But I don't think he is the right man for the job, just because, all the things you mentioned, like he had a pretty well, he did win something at Chelsea, something pretty big. But I think overall, like, he crashed and burned on the way out of there, right? Really quickly. He's really great at burning bridges. And I think the England manager role has to have a little bit of a politician about him, to be able to manage pieces, right? Because we talked about it already, that one of the best things that Southgate was around bringing people together. So if Tuchel is all about separating people and creating friction, I'm not sure that's going to create a winning environment.
Yeah, no. What do you think, anyway?
Yeah, I think on the point around the nationality of the coach, for me, it's as you guys have said, it should just be the right man for the job. It really shouldn't matter where you come from. Unfortunately, given it's 2024, the sort of rhetoric around nationalism in the UK is quite high at the moment, with certain right-wing views out there being pushed by certain publications and getting a lot of reach and a lot of attention. And maybe it being October post-election, they probably timed that as well as they could to a degree. Yeah. You think this sort of this appointment coming in when Farage was sort of gunning for his role as an MP, that could have really wound some people up. But I do think it's a polarized nation at the moment when it comes to things like racism and xenophobia. And picking a German manager to manage the England football side, I think just taps into a lot of people's bias. And I think some people will come out and not be happy with it. I was surprised that the likes of Gary Neville, was again someone with his reach, would also come out and be quite publicly against that appointment because of the audience that he attracts. And again, I don't think that's particularly healthy at this point. I just don't think the nationality piece should be, it shouldn't be a point, but I can understand why it is a point. But to the degree at which he's a good coach, yes or no, I can understand why they considered him, but I'd like to know how they ended up picking him. What was that shortlist, and how high was he on it initially before they sort of got to that decision? But yeah, I agree. It should be the best man for the job. But yeah, unfortunately, living in the UK in 2024, it was always gonna rile some people up for rightly or wrongly. But it is, we've done that now. He's in the job, and I think he's got every chance to succeed. Given his experience, he is a winner. As you say, he won the Champions League with Chelsea with a side that probably shouldn't have won the Champions League. That's a big milestone. He did what he should have done at Paris Saint-Germain. If you don't win Ligue 1, that raises more question marks than anything else. So I think he's got every chance to succeed. But yeah, to that point you made as well, if he doesn't get a result in 2-3 games, you can imagine the narrative will quickly shift to questioning why the FA made that appointment. And I just don't think that's healthy. I really don't think that's healthy right now. We should be working towards the next tournament. Everyone on the same boat. Let's get it done. And that's why I think it's good they've made that decision now. They haven't extended Lee Carsley's reign to sort of limbo into 2025, where they've just eaten up more time to actually get a setup flowing. So let's just let's work towards that next 2026, and let's just hope that he can get these guys to gel, which I think he's got every chance to do.
Yeah, and I think you made a great example about Gary Neville and the media. there. And I think for me, that's something I have a big issue with, is they know the state of the country at the moment and how a lot of English fans will be feeling about the appointment. And for Gary Neville to kind of come out and be that critical about it when there's not really that many English options. Again, like looking, like yesterday I was just doing my research to look at, okay, who was the last England manager or England coach, or England person that coached in England, what do they want? And the last person was Harry Redknapp in 2008. So like that puts in perspective that there's not that many English coaches. Like you look at the Pep Guardiola tree at the moment, you think about Vincent Kompany, Mikel Arteta, the Chelsea manager. Tuchel in some ways came through that tree as well from Bayern Munich. I believe, not Bayern Munich, I think not Ten Hag. I believe Ten Hag came through the tree as well when it was at Ajax, before he came to Ajax. So for me, when you see that England don't really have a setup for there to be another coach, and then someone like Gary Neville can come on openly and be so negative, for me, I think it's problematic, and I think highlights the problem that we have with media here in the UK. And yeah, I mean, listen, good luck to him. I hope he's able to figure it out. I hope we're able to win. I think he's got the players to do it. Personally, I think attacking wise, I think this is probably the best bunch of attacking players that we've had in a very, very long time. Defensively, maybe not perfect, but I still think I'll still put it as a top 5 defense in world football. And the midfield, again, is very, very strong. So I think he should be able to do a job. My thing for him would be, how will he manage the pressure of the negative media? Fans chanting. You never know what the fans are going to be chanting at Wembley Stadium. And that's something I think is going to be a bit of a concern, because again, I believe there's a chant that they do around like the bombings and stuff. And again, I'm sure that's going to slide in at some point. So I think that's going to be interesting to see what happens with that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you make there. To see England fans throwing, empty plastic cups at Southgate when he was going around clapping, that's not great. And add in a German manager at Wembley, you think the likelihood of that happening is going to be even higher, So we need to step away from this polarization and just get on board with it. Because he is, I think he is a good enough coach to have a successful England career. He's got enough experience. He has got a good track record. Yes, he can be a bit divisive in some of his methods, but the social aspect of football needs to help itself as well. So that's to that point of Gary Neville. Media outlets, just don't give them a reason. Because there is, as I say, there isn't. Who is going to be that England manager? It's not going to be Harry Redknapp, and that speaks to that wider point around nurturing that next English talent. And who is that going to be? And I think we just have to appreciate that there just isn't anyone now. Yeah.
Have you guys looked into the numbers? I was looking into how much it costs to become a coach, and it's significantly more expensive to become, a licensed coach in England than it is in Spain, Germany, France, and the other leagues. So in some ways, you could say like the FA are pricing out football fans or people that would have an interest in coaching. It's significantly more, especially after the first level. So again, that's something that they need to look at as well, because if it's not affordable and people have to fork out 9k in order to get a certain level, most people can't afford to spend that kind of money. So I think that's something they need to explore as well, making it more affordable for people to do the badges.
Yeah, I don't know about that, man. I kind of feel like if you're doing the back, if you want to become an England coach, or if you want to become a coach in football, like you're going to be, there's something that you're going to be seriously passionate about, and I doubt you'd see the money as a barrier to becoming it. I think you just see it like you do like a university degree or whatever. Take this time to invest in myself and do it. So I think the reason that we're not seeing English managers come through is just because of the opportunities that are given to foreign managers in the league. I think that's more of the reason why that's not happening. And I only say that because if you look at backroom staff at a lot of these clubs, I think it's starting to change now. But if you look at a lot of the backroom staffs, they are all English managers. If you look at the Man United backroom staff, what we're seeing is a lot of former players coming to the league as well. So you're seeing, if we look at Man United, we had Darren Fletcher, we had What's his name, Eric, etc. Like Carrick, Giggs. We don't really talk about Giggs anymore because of what he did in the past. But I think that's more the reason why we're not seeing.
I hear that, but I think for me, like I'm not even talking like £100, £200 difference, but like grams in difference. So like for me, I think especially if you're not getting it funded by the club you're with, like it's a large amount of money, especially early doors, especially from a young age. If someone is doing it at 17, 18, 19 years old, it's a large outlay early doors. So yeah, again, maybe his opportunity is a large part of it. And that's a conversation as well for black coaches. Why there not enough black coaches within the Premier League and within football as a whole. But even beyond that, I think the money is something that has to be looked at. It needs to be more affordable. And it's a complaint. People are having issues with living in the UK as a whole, or living in London especially as a whole, just in terms of how expensive it is to live here. So if you're pricing,
trying to get out.
If they're pricing people out, people will move on, and that's the reason why we have so many coaches that are in the Premier League right now that aren't English. And if there's not a change towards it or a pathway that improves, it's going to be like that. And you have owners that are not English, you have coaches that aren't English, and who knows, potentially you might have academy players, etc., also not English as well, starting 11. So definitely something that needs to be considered and looked at.
Definitely. Well, lads, I think we spent enough time on England and the England manager role. Let's focus on the good old mighty United, the theatre of dreams, the greatest club in the country, the most historic club in the country, really a big flag bearer for the greatness of English football, has the mighty United been for probably the last 30 or 40 years. So, and one of the people that is most responsible for that is Sir Alex Ferguson, a Fergie, fondly known to many, and he has been cut from the wage bill at United. He's no longer receiving remuneration. And I'm going to link this into kind of point 3 and 4 so we can discuss it together in terms of what is going on at United. Is this a good thing that he's not on the bill anymore? Is this going to be helpful for Eric Ten Hag not having the big bad figure of Sir Alex Ferguson lurking in the stands, which it seems like every single manager seems to have pressure from, other than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, by the way. So what the hell is going on at Man United, lads?
I tell you, I've been telling you for a minute. Again, I think the ownership was a huge problem, and to be fair, they're still very much involved. The Glazers are still very much involved with Man United, but ownership was a major issue. I think there wasn't a clear direction of what they were trying to achieve. Initially, it was trying to buy the biggest stars in Europe, and then from there, they've now tried to kind of bring in like the right managers, and maybe they didn't really understand what their style of play is. And then now they've got Ten Hag, and there's now that challenge of, is it Ten Hag or the players? And I guess fans are now come to realization maybe it's the players. But for me, I think it's at I think there's a problem at every single level. Ten Hag for me I didn't think, after I'll say like 6 months, I didn't think he was the right hire for Man United. I think he was delusional with some of the stuff he was saying, especially with the way he was challenging Arteta on certain things. Tactically, from what we're seeing at Ajax, we weren't seeing that at United. So I think very, very quickly he either dropped his style of play or felt pressure to kind of change it. And even with that, didn't really win. And then you look on the fact that the players that you guys have brought in, since someone like Ten Hag has been around, I can't really put my finger on one, and you guys are going to maybe help me with this. I can't really put my finger on one who has been exceptional that he's brought in, that Man United fans are generally happy about. Again, I can't think of, can you guys name
Zlatan? Yep.
Nah, bro.
No. I think he was fantastic that season that he came and joined us.
Nah. Again, he was positive. Again, it wasn't a terrible move.
He was one of the best strikers in the league on that year.
Did he set you guys up? You guys.
He set us up to win 3 trophies. Yeah,
we didn't win.
No, we did. We won the Europa, the Carabao Cup, and the Community Shield. Off
the back of it, you guys haven't won. Again, what I'm saying is, I'm referring to Casemiro as well, for example. You guys have brought in players there hasn't actually been a clear direction, in my
No,
opinion.
but what you said is that they haven't been positive, and Zlatan was positive to the club.
Okay, maybe we can say Zlatan and Ronaldo were positive, but in terms of they had bigger issues on the club as a whole. So
Ronaldo wasn't positive.
I disagree, because when he came in,
so now you're disagreeing with your point. You're disagreeing with your point then.
No. So Ronaldo was positive in the same way in which Zlatan was positive. I think in terms of like the hype that he created for the club, everyone was excited about him coming. But in terms of actually planning for the future of the club, I don't think either the Zlatan or Ronaldo moves made sense.
The Ronaldo point, though, is interesting because it links back to the question around Fergie. He definitely played a role in getting Cristiano Ronaldo to come back to United. And that was one example of his influence at the club post him, walking away from the managerial role. Mm-hmm. So the Athletic article on it, I think, quoted that he was on a package of just over £2 million remuneration a year. That was sort of his deal, as this sort of ambassador role for Man United. And he was very much there to be that point of, add a bit of stardust to conversations, to commercial conversations, to conversations with partners, and then conversations with potential transfers. He definitely played a role in getting Ronaldo to come back to United. I think he has played indirect and direct roles in United's recent commercial deals. And when you think of a club that turns over 650 million pounds a year, and he's on £2 million a year, you really do wonder, when they think of cutting costs, how they've ended up deciding the guy that put United on the map and has put them into a position of being able to have those numbers from a revenue perspective. How they decide that he's expendable seems bonkers. The amount of value that he adds to the business for that cost, the ROI is massive. And unfortunately, they've got themselves into that hole from really poor acquisitions. And over the last couple of seasons, you do just have a horror story of a lot of money spent on talent that hasn't worked out. Casemiro, not the right signing. For me, Cristiano Ronaldo wasn't the right signing. I can understand why they did it, and he did have an impact, but it didn't speak to it. It sort of contradicted what Arteta was doing at Arsenal around building a team around a system, whereas bringing Ronaldo, everyone else was singing to his hymn sheet, and it was a very short-term move. We'll get someone in, add some value for a short period of time, then we'll have to fix it a couple of years down the line. Hasn't worked. Anthony, of course, one of the worst transfers that they've made. You can even look at Maguire, poor transfer. You look more recently, bringing in De Ligt. He wasn't starting in the game against Villa. They had to bring in Johnny Evans and Maguire to play at centre-back. You just look at all of these transfers, all in the sort of £70 million as well, that sort of region of 7. And they just haven't worked. And unfortunately, they're not the ones that you can easily get off the wage bill, get off the wage bill. So they've had to look elsewhere. But for them to land on getting rid of Fergie seems really difficult to swallow. As an Arsenal fan, you look at it and you go, wow, that must be tough for some United fans like yourself, Jeremy, to understand, to surely rationalise. The guy who put United on the map, to see your club then sort of say, no, we're done with you now. Thanks very much. We're moving past you. Surely that's got to be a painful thing to see.
Well, let me ask you guys something. Real simple question. I want to hear it from the both of you. Should Arsenal be paying Arsene Wenger a salary?
But he's not. In what sense, though? Because he doesn't have a role at the club. Granted, there could be value in bringing him into the club,
but you guys have been able to get back slowly, very slowly, and I guess you guys started from a much lower position than we did. But you've gradually managed to get back to competing at the top of the league, right? And you didn't need to have your most successful manager in the background, lurking in the shadows over
He didn't.
and influence. And right, as
He
you
didn't
say
leave
this,
as our most successful manager, though. You know, Fergie left on a high, winning the league, going, I've done as much as I can do, and probably still have energy to be involved in the club, which he was. Wenger hits 2017, 2018. The narrative is that he's been there for too long. We just have to finally reach a point at which we can cut ties with him. And Wenger had no interest in being around the club. So even if I think we offered him a role, I don't think he would have taken it. And that's why he was absent for so long. And I think it was a couple of seasons ago, there was a bit of a hoo-ha about Wenger being at an Arsenal game, because I think he was, similar to Klopp, run out of motivation, run out of energy, needs to get away from here. I think Arsene Wenger was probably in a similar headspace, which I don't think Ferguson was in. And United could definitely see, okay, well, let's keep this guy close to us because he has some serious commercial clout, which we can leverage. And, the Cristiano Ronaldo acquisition is just one example of that. And there'll be the intangibilities of those commercial deals. I just don't think Wenger...
Henry, mate,
Yeah,
I think you said it best yourself just there. He has some commercial benefit and value to the club, and obviously he has great football knowledge. But the last thing any CEO wants to have when they join an organization is have the previous CEO being best mates with all the directors above him and having influence around. So I think from a business standpoint, yes, there is lots of value from having Alex Ferguson a part of that. But I think it actually held us back from a managerial standpoint, feeling like they were the true owners of that club from an actual on the field decision.
I think there's definitely merit in that argument. And if you're Erik ten Hag going through a difficult spell on the touchline and you look up to the stands in Old Trafford and you see that line of directors with Fergie sitting there, you must feel like you got the weight of the world on your shoulders. That is a difficult, that's a difficult thing to manage. I definitely understand that side of it. But you also then have to think that, well, a lot of the financial freedom that Erik ten Hag and Man United coaches have had has been a result of the financial success that the club can attribute.
Absolutely.
So you can't
let's be really clear about that. I think
you can't eat with one hand and
No. But I think it's completely separate. I mean, we have to say, look, you did your time. We're so thankful. And guess what? You were paid incredibly well to do that, right? It wasn't as if Fergie worked for free at United, right? I just think that he should have, when he left, taking a nice long period of time away from the club and then come back in really special circumstances. And they didn't need to have him a fish on. They should have just given him like a brown paper bag with some cash in there every so often when we needed to roll him into some decisions. I just think saying that he created, this environment for all these other managers is unfair, because then we're going to be like 20 years down the line and saying, Ferguson gets to eat for free, or he should be able to eat for free at United.
I genuinely think he should. I just don't think it's particularly right to look past his impact at the club. And I think there should be...
What he should get is what he should get is the treatment of free season tickets. You have your own suite at the club, right? You have all the hospitality that you like. Invite as many people as you like.
Which I think he'll still have. I think he will still have.
Of course he will. But I think that's what he always should have had. He shouldn't have had that major stake in the club for as long as he has.
Yes, I think something that Henry kind of mentioned is the fact that he left on a high, and I think that has to be taken into consideration. Like when he left on a high, you guys were in a good position. It was a surprise at the end of the season when he was leaving. Because he's been around for so long, he's met a lot of coaches. He was needed to help take you guys into the transition of the next period. I think where you guys went wrong is that you also brought in a coach wasn't
That
ready.
he suggested.
Yeah, no. So,
Not only did he suggest, he was like, back this manager. And a lot of people also say, I'm not one of them, I'm just saying an argument out here, they're playing devil's advocate, although the devil has enough advocates. I am just saying that some people said that Fergie actually left us in a really bad position with that team, right? Even though they just won the league, which I think is a terrible argument. But that is an argument. People say that he suggested that we have David Moyes take over, and then he also left us with like a diminished aging squad that only he could manage.
But people didn't think so at the time, as far as I remember, people didn't think Moyes was a terrible coach for you guys to have next.
No, of course, no one thought that at the time, but it proves that he.
Yeah. So I don't think you can put that on Fergie's shoulders.
Yeah, just didn't work out, bro.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying that he's playing this position as an influence in the club now that he's retired. His first suggestion was a flop. Can we agree on that?
I don't think it was. You can understand the decision.
He bought Fellaini.
But Fellaini wasn't the first choice. Fellaini wasn't the first choice.
So but that's the issue with United, and that's where we found ourselves now. Is that when we don't get our first choice, we don't go for our second choice. We go for our third and fourth choice, and that's where we are.
Which Arsenal have proved to be a good route to go down.
Picking your third and fourth choice. No, they haven't.
Don't get Mudryk.
Yeah, Trossard is the perfect example of that.
You know, Mudryk was our first choice by some distance, and we're lucky enough that Chelsea decided to spend what they did on him.
Even Mason Mount is an interesting one. I'm pretty certain Arsenal wanted to go for Mason Mount, and then in the end he went to Man United.
Yeah.
I think, again, I don't know how true that was, but Mason...
And that's...
Gone.
It's been those transfers which I think are the elephant in the room, because you do then have that fixed liability on your book for X number of years. And to your point, you know, Afo, who's been successful? You know, what's been a good signing from United? You know, if you have to go all the way back to Cristiano Ronaldo, who I don't think was the right signing, but yes, he definitely had a positive impact on the side. I can't really think of one who's been...
Yes. And you know what's interesting? Jeremy and I have had this conversation, and we used to have it all the time about Bruno. And Jeremy, do you still love Bruno?
I've never loved Bruno. I've never loved Bruno.
Jeremy, I think go back to episode 4 or 5, Jeremy. You love Bruno. Bro.
No, I mean he had a fantastic impact in his. He had a fantastic impact in his first season at the club. Like, there's no way
scoring penalties though.
No. Well,
I test Jeremy.
Let's not put Cole Palmer, because that boy's cold. But what I'm saying is, when Bruno joined the club at that beginning, I think he joined he was a January signing, wasn't he? Yeah. And you saw the run that we went on when Ollie was in charge. Wow, there's not anyone in the whole of the league who was on form like him, right, across Europe. But what I've seen since is that his stats are great from a goal and assist perspective, but he's incredibly wasteful with the ball. I think he loses it far too often. He tries Hollywood passes way too often. I actually don't think defensively he's very strong for us. And also, I'm a really, really big hater of the way that he struts around the pitch, like screaming at everybody. When he makes a mistake, no one's screaming at him. So maybe, you know, Casemiro should have been barking at him, because he's probably one of the few players in the club that has the
same clout.
More clout. Who has the CV to do that.
So I think Bruno, and the fact that you're mentioning that the passing, for example, has kind of declined. For me, that's been there from the start. Like, he's been very good at scoring his goals. He's scored a lot of penalties. Seemed to be on the end of the goal in terms of creating the assists. But in terms of wasteful chances and the way he was just kicking the ball, he's always been reckless with the football. He
has always been there, but now it's more prevalent because he's not scoring and assisting as much.
Yeah, well, this season, I guess this season he hasn't had much going for him. But I feel like from day one, and maybe it's because you guys were playing a free attacking football at the time, so maybe he was getting in positions where it was easier for him to score, especially during Ole's run. But early on, as someone that's meant to be a creative midfielder, you expect them to be on the ball loads. And he was on the ball loads, but still found the way to kind of consistently lose the ball. So I think when you take that into consideration, that highlights why probably, because I think he's 29 now? 29, 30?
Probably 30.
So, I think him being made captain, I understand why, because again, how intense he is, and he seems to be someone that doesn't necessarily give up. But in terms of bringing players along and keeping things calm, he is not that guy. But again, he seems to kind of score a lot of goals, create a lot of chances, create chances at times. But his job, which is to kind of keep things ticking over and keep the ball, he is shocking at that.
Jerry, what do you make of the Agate signing? I can understand from a numbers perspective. I can understand why they went into the market to try and shore up the midfield. Like the numbers last season were pretty staggering. United were 6th in the league for the highest open play expected goals against. 6th. That was 40, just under 48 goals they were expected to concede from the chances they conceded in open play. They only conceded 36, which speaks to Onana being a very good shot stopper, which he is. I don't think people would argue with that. But it speaks to a wider issue around United's midfield not doing a very good job of being that first line of defence. And so bringing in someone like Agate made sense on paper to try and shore up that midfield, give the defence more cover, give the keeper more cover. But so far, it doesn't seem like he's hit the ground running. And when is he going to start showing his value?
Look, again, as you literally just said, I understand why they wanted someone like Agate in the team, but I just think it goes back to signings like. Actually, I think they were pretty good signings. I was going to say signings like Daley Blind, signings like Herrera. I actually think those two were pretty good signings for United. But it goes back to, I don't know, maybe someone like the kid we signed from Ajax in the midfield. I forget his name, leaves me now, but he just left us this season. I don't know if you guys.
Donny van der Beek.
Van der Beek, right? It screams of something like that a little bit. Although Agate is much.
For your sake, I hope it's not like that because.
But also, I'm hoping, again, it's early days. It's really early days in the Prem. I'm hoping that he does pick up some form and because we do need someone in that midfield to just do the dog work. We need someone to be, like an old school Owen Hargreaves or, just someone to do the hard graft and then just provide the ball to someone else who can make something happen, like a Kante or all the old school players that we have. So look, of course, at the moment, it looks like, okay, wow, United just wasted another 50 million. But we've got to eventually stick with the manager, stick with his signings, and let him have like a 4-year period and just say, look, guys, we're sticking behind the manager. Because one of the issues that's wrong with United is that we have had a load of managers that are taking other people's signings. And then now the board has to offload a whole load of cash to make sure that they get the signings that they actually want. And then that cycle just happens again and again. And that's why we've spent so much money. I'll be honest, I don't care about how much money we've spent in the transfer window. That seems to be like a thing that a lot of fans love to like throw. Oh, you spent $1 billion on players. Yeah, it's because we can. We have that money coming in. So
you say you can, but then you can't afford to keep Fergie on the books, and a lot of the background in marketing, all that sort of stuff, is starting to get hurt.
Radcliffe is trying to streamline operations at the club because it's just not a really well-oiled machine at the minute. But it is a moneymaker. There's no two ways about it, right? It is a moneymaker.
So do you think you should keep Ten Hag then? Because from what your tone, it suggests that you feel you should give him more time.
I'll be honest, yeah, I think we should, especially because there's no one else out there. Zidane's not coming to us. Diego Simeone's not coming to us. There is no elite manager out there that will be coming to United. So, yeah, unfortunately, guys, you stick with Eric for this will be his third season now. His third season. So you give him until the end of his third season, his fourth, maybe, and then we assess him at the end of that. Look, do I think he is the man for the job? No, but do I think if you give someone enough time with being able to implement a style that they want to implement. Can they do something for the club? I think so, yes.
So you don't think he was given the time? Because he's been there for nearly 3 years.
He's been there for two years.
This is his third season.
Yeah, but this is the start of the third season, yeah.
You don't think he's been given the time to put his style of play onto the Man United squad?
Well, as you said, there's this cyclical process that's been happening at United of managers coming in, having to integrate their players into a squad that they don't, which is a really big squad. And you mentioned it yourself, Henry, earlier, that we buy these players, big money, big long contracts, and you can't get rid of them. The club's been trying to get rid of Harry Maguire for a couple of seasons now, maybe 3 seasons. We've been trying to get rid of him, but we can't because no one's willing to take him on. And as you just said, Afo, he might even be one of the best.
He's also not willing to go. I think
he's not willing to go as well. Yeah,
moved from West Ham, which he didn't want to take.
Yeah.
You know what? Fair play to the lad. I respect him for wanting to get his spot. But what I'm saying is that although his first season he did well, managed to win something, I think that because of the state of the club, it's going to take a couple of seasons before he can really say, this is completely my team. And you said, I'm just like repeating what you boys are saying. Casemiro isn't a signing that makes a lot of sense. And I wonder whether he was the first choice, but everybody was excited about having Casemiro in the squad. I think the players that you can see that are his and that have been really successful by injury, someone like Martinez, right? He's rated incredibly highly in the footballing world as a centre back, especially by Pep when we beat them in the FA Cup final last year. So I think getting more players like that, and look, I don't like his overall recruitment because he's tried to raid the Dutch league, and I just don't think that is a good breeding zone for talent coming into the Premier League. I just don't think it is.
I think that whole... I totally agree with your point that I don't think now would be the right time to get rid of him, considering they bankrolled his summer activities, acquiring that previous talent he worked with in De Ligt and Maswari. And I think you do have to... I think this third season is that difficult third element. You have... This is it. This is his last chance. He needs to prove value here. And he's got the best chance to do it because he's working with players that he has previously worked with. But I think the numbers from last season, and to Afo's point, some of the stuff he was coming out with, especially anchored towards Arsenal and being upset about offsides, which he wouldn't let go. I genuinely don't think he's a good coach. And to bring in players that he previously worked with, I understand why, but it's not particularly innovative. It's not new. It's taking the easy route. And if the easy route doesn't work, then you do wonder what he really adds to the table. And as I say, the numbers from last season, like at an aggregate level, United was shambolic. They had a negative goal difference in terms of expected goals for and expected goals against. It's just ridiculous. They had a lot of success which they can put down to their goalkeeper, which, I don't even think he's a very good goalkeeper in the modern game.
No, come on.
He's a good shot.
I've said the same thing. I don't know what United fans. Again, I think he makes saves at times, but he reminds me of Ramsdale.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does. I wouldn't swap Banana for Raya, given the way we want to play football. I wouldn't do it. And
when you guys understand the pressures that a United goalkeeper goes through, you would understand.
And David Raya didn't have that last.
David Raya's pressure was crazy.
No, I'm talking about pressure as in our defense is shit.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. That's what I mean.
Be on point. So it's what I'm saying is not thinking he's a very. I think he's unfair. Not thinking he's a very good keeper because I think he is a good keeper. I think he's a better footballer than someone like David De Gea. Although I think David De Gea was perfectly serviceable at the time. I probably wouldn't have even sold him if I was the manager. But again, as we said, Erik ten Hag wants to get his players in. So it's ultimately, if you guys think he's just not a good manager, then I'm assuming you guys think we should let him go and go through this process all over again.
You've got to give him this season. That's unless you have a really, really terrible run where you have to really start questioning, well, what are we going to get out of this season? You know, if you have a spell of 5 consecutive defeats or something, then you may have to go, right, this is actually getting untenable now. But I think you do have to give him that time. You bankrolled him in the summer. You have to now give him that space. He's got, as you said, Jared, Jezza, he's not got Fergie now looking down on him in the same way that he has been. He shouldn't have that board pressure to that same degree. You've got to give him the time now to try and thrive. But I genuinely don't think that he is a good enough coach to do that. So I'd give him the time, but everything is a bonus at this point because I don't think the bar is very high. But I also appreciate, like with the England manager decision, there isn't a great deal of options, in the same way that's what the argument was over the summer. We have this really bizarre situation where ahead of the FA Cup final, everyone was saying that's his last game. It was kind of a really poorly kept secret.
Yeah.
And yet it only turned out to not be his last game because United couldn't find a replacement. And that's a really strange situation to be in when you basically are saying you've still got the job because we couldn't find anyone else. So I think for United do have to now just commit with him and give him that space to try and do as well as he can. But I don't see it. I don't see it turning around. What do you think, Afo?
Well, first, I'm intrigued as to why the Fergie news was announced. Why was it made so public, and who leaked it? Was it Fergie's side or the club making the media aware? Because I can't imagine Fergie.
Good question. Yeah, it's a good question. Why do you want to make that public?
Yeah,
I don't think there's any upside to it.
Great stress and pressure. So again, I don't know why they've made it public.
Also, I wonder how many people knew that he was on that amount of money. I reckon not a lot of people. I didn't know that he was earning $2 million a year.
Because they're a floated company, it probably stated in their annual reports, I would assume, given the position, because there's typically a section on sort of directors' remuneration. Right. I would assume that you might be able to find some figure attributed in those reports. But to the point around it, the news becoming public, I don't think that would have been a decision they would have wanted to make.
Yeah, it's not in anyone's favour. Again, it doesn't help the manager, doesn't help the club. And if anything, it creates more pressure from the fans as well. My issue with Ten Hag, I feel he's lost the changing room. And I think you could tell at the end with the FA Cup last year, even though he won, that helps things helps to smooth things over a little bit. But going into new season, he's brought on the players he's brought on. The fans are already fed up and frustrated. You're seeing the reaction from some of the players already when they're being taken off. So I agree. I think he needs to be given the rest of the season because there's no one else really that you guys can bring on. Unless you go Van Nistelrooy route and maybe you kind of bump him up. But even that's a risk in itself. But yeah, I think until again another option becomes available, you guys are going to have to slum it out with him. Maybe if you lose 5, 6, 7 games in a row, then it makes it easier to get rid of him. But there's no other options available. I think he's lost the changing room already. And as an Arsenal fan, listen, I don't mind him sticking around, to be honest with you. I don't mind him sticking around. But it's just more of the same from United. And I think United's best option would probably be to kind of play out the season and then maybe you bump up Ruud van Nistelrooy. I think that's probably like the best option.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a terrible option because what does Van Nistelrooy know about football more than Ten Hag, right? What that would be? No, I know, but from my perspective, Ten Hag is way more experienced at the job. He's had much more seasoning than young Van Nistelrooy. I'll say the only benefit you get from putting Van Nistelrooy in place is he'll be given time like Ole. It'll literally just be an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer with a bit more experience at a higher level. So
you don't necessarily think, again, Company hasn't had that much seasoning, even though again,
what's Company done?
He's gone to Bayern Munich now, so clearly they've seen in him that this is a great manager.
Yo, Company's done nothing in my opinion.
Well, he got Burnley back into the Prem. Yes, they got relegated again, but
yeah, I think he's
Burnley were going to be one of the favourites to come back into the Prem. Let's be honest, right? I just think
Tottenham's style of play just didn't work out. I think you look at Mikel Arteta.
Exactly.
Mikel Arteta,
If your style of play can't work at the club you're at, then change your style of play.
Arteta didn't work for some time.
But exactly,
It didn't work when he first joined Man City. Pep's didn't work when he first joined Man City.
Exactly, it didn't work for some time, but then eventually they got there. At those clubs where they have to consider relegation, you don't have time to give these guys 3 years to put in a style of play and then hope that we don't get relegated. And by the time we don't get relegated by 2 seasons, they don't go into insolvency.
What is Ten Hag's style of play though? I don't know what his identity is.
We don't know exactly. We saw it at Ajax, but he, for some reason, is afraid of implementing that. He tried his first couple of games when he was at United, right, to implement it. It didn't work out. So he reverted back to, again, nobody really knows. No one really knows. But as I said, I'm just on that company piece, like, he's the wrong person to have at Bayern Munich, in my opinion. I haven't seen anything that makes me say this guy is going to be sensational. I think leave Ruud van Nistelrooy alone. He's my favourite player of all time. Let's let him have a little bit more seasoning and let's do an England version where we, let this guy grow in the role and then he can take the job. Hey, well, look, Henry, how was that, boy? Your first input into the Sports After Party podcast. How do you feel it went?
Oh no, absolute pleasure, guys. Good conversation, really good conversation. It's nice to have a platform to have these conversations rather than just on WhatsApp groups.
Definitely, man. Bro, it's been good to have you, bro. It's been good to have you. And Afo, as always, thank you. Always a pleasure.
No, Henry, again, really good to have you on again. Love the stats, love the insight and the way you break things down. So thanks for coming on, and we'd love to have you on more often, man.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. Yeah.
Well, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed that as well. This is the Sports After Party podcast, and we're out.
I'm a different type of rock star. I got class and I got Henny overflowing up my shot glass. And yeah, I know I'm not a keeper, but can you be my mama seater by the time I'm done with